to be a leader of people, actually a team leader, if I was to identify that, first and foremost, you need to lead by example. I mean, nobody gets a free pass here. It's like, a goodr, like, everything eventually is my fault, and then that's what's the flockster's fault and the flock leader's fault. So I think you need lead by example. You need personal accountability. That's really, really important. And I think you need to be invested in honing the emotional intelligence of looking somebody in the eye and praising them when they need praise and giving them critical feedback when that's what's needed. I think that is at the base level. If you're not willing to have those three things, lead by example, have personal accountability, and be honest with people, you're fucked. You're not going to last here.
Welcome to the Culture Goodr podcast, a behind-the-shades look at creating and changing culture inside of goodr sunglasses.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Goodr podcast. Today, we're going to talk about effective leadership, mostly at goodr, but I think it'll apply to a lot of things. So, Stephen, let's just jump right in. How do we define leadership at goodr?
Anyone who finds the potential in a person or process and has the courage to develop that potential.
All right.
And that's a Brene Brown definition, so can't take credit there.
Nice. But we're borrowing from greatness, so it works, right?
For sure. I think she would love it.
Yeah. Why not? Definitely. Also, come on the podcast, Brene. We'd love to talk about it with you.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime you want.
Totally. Another thing that I've enjoyed about this kind of conversation is we always say that leadership is an action, not a position, right? There's you can think of a management hierarchy or something like that, but all of us are leaders because we're showing each other how something can be by being that way ourselves.
Yeah, I think it is really important in this to always draw the distinction between a manager and a leader. That's really important. I did this riff on my Instagram the other day that is, managers give orders, leaders ask questions. Managers have subordinates, leaders have followers. Managers hold authority, leaders are motivational. Managers tell you what, leaders show you how. Managers have good ideas, leaders inspire good ideas. Managers react to change, leaders create change. Managers want power over, leaders give power to. Managers avoid tough conversations, leaders lean into tough conversations. Managers don't exist at goodr, leaders do. And I think at the base level, if you're talking about especially a corporate environment, understanding the difference between a manager and a leader.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, and you can be in charge without leading, right?
You can be in charge without leading. You can also, lead without being in charge. And also, you can want to lead and not manage people. That's also true.
Yeah. Okay. So I love that post, everything you just read. What's your favorite part of it?
Well, I mean, I think I wrote this so I could go. I love all of them. I would say I love the most interesting one is probably managers want power over, leaders give power to. And that's something that I've heard before of how do I make them change? I'm like, well, you can't make anybody do anything. I mean, I'm the CEO of the company, Sean. I can't make anybody here do anything. I can try and inspire them. I can give them critical feedback. I can point them in the right direction. But at the core, I don't actually have power over anyone. And that's, once you understand that, then that is the first step to becoming a leader.
That's right. If I could summarize the last few years of therapy, it's like release control of others and outcomes. Realize you can only control this one, and even this one, barely.
Yeah, barely.
But do your best with the one you can, right?
For sure.
So what do you think are the key traits? I mean, I think that actually illustrates it pretty well. But if you had to boil down some fundamental key traits of an effective leader at goodr, how'd you describe that?
Yeah, I do think we are a different machine here, right? I think that, we're going to go into a bit of leadership styles. I think that's contextual. But I think when I said something in second ago, which was, you can be a leader and not want to manage people because, even in the context of if you have people report to you, you are a manager. So that is a role. And I think that at goodr, to be a leader of people, actually a team leader, if I was to identify that, first and foremost, you need to lead by example. I mean, nobody gets a free pass here. It's like, a goodr, like, everything eventually is my fault, and then that's so it's the flock star's fault, then the flock leader's fault. So I think you need lead by example. You need personal accountability. That's really, really important. And I think you need to be invested in honing the emotional intelligence of looking somebody in the eye and praising them when they need praise, and giving them critical feedback when that's what's needed. I think that is at the base level. If you're not willing to have those three things, lead by example, have personal accountability, and be honest with people, you're fucked. You're not going to last here.
Yeah, totally.
You are, right?
Right. Because you'll be fine until something's not okay. And then how are you going to manage that, right? How are you going to communicate and like help lead someone through a difficult situation, or like something didn't go well? You can't just be like, you'll get it next time. Get on out there. I believe in you. It's not going to work. Yeah. So we focus a lot on training our leaders because we want to set them up for success, right? So what are some of the ways that we invite folks into understanding this new way of being within goodr?
Well, you could probably speak to flock leader onboarding.
Yeah, definitely.
How do we onboard our leaders nowadays, Sean?
Okay, cool. Well, so we didn't used to. It's embarrassing to say, but we used to just hire folks and be like, you got this.
We didn't onboard our flock leaders separately for a long time.
Exactly. So we didn't set...
or not separately, but we didn't add on the leadership skill development.
Correct. There was no leadership track, right? So they got the same onboarding as everyone else, minus the part where we clearly communicate exactly what we expect of everyone in a leadership position at goodr. So we developed, Nicole led the charge to develop Flock Leader 101, where she's like, okay, here's all the typical situations you're going to run into as a leader that you might not as an individual contributor. So how do you handle all those things? And then from there, that kind of grew, that created the platform for us to build on some more toolkits of communication, accountability, feedback and coaching and this kind of thing. And then develop a leadership mindset that allows someone to say, am I being a player here or am I being a spectator? How is my team participating in things? Are we being passive and blaming? Are we taking responsibility and power in that same sense, right? So leadership now has their own onboarding track, which is, we call Flock Leader 101. And then we recently hired a leadership coach as well, which I think is one of the most supportive things that could possibly be done to help leaders grow and develop even more leaders within an organization. Yeah,
I think it is the embarrassing realization of like, oh well, you gotta train your leaders to be leaders.
Set the expectations you want to be met.
And I think the other thing that we've gotten better at from the jump is understanding, what makes somebody good in their role does not necessarily make them a good leader. And that's okay. So we've gotten, I think, really a lot better at identifying that. And so, because from the beginning, it is getting the right people in the right position. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you foster that. But if you have the wrong person in the wrong position, no level of Flock Leader 101 is going to...
Right. That's not going to... The information isn't going to shift the motivation, right? Yeah, for sure. So like, we're continuously learning. We make a conscious effort to learn continuously as leaders, to the point where everyone at a leadership level was sitting in a mastery meeting yesterday together, talking about different leadership styles, right? In that, Matt, our leadership coach, was reinforcing the idea of there's like an active way to participate in something or a passive way. If there's two ways to frame something and one of them is empowering to you and one of them is disempowering, choose the empowering one if you can. Yes. Which requires self-awareness, right? So awareness and responsibility. One of the things that I've heard that I really love is redefining responsibility as a two-word thing. The word response and ability. My ability to respond to something, right? So that puts it in a context where we have a conscious choice about how we want to show up in a situation. And then the question of leadership style was put forward, and it's like, hey, what's your leadership style? Is it like affirmative coaching or whatever. There's like some pithy 1 or 2 word answers.
Yeah.
And then what was the right answer to that question?
Well, yeah. What's your leadership style? Depends. Or, what's the situation?
In what context? Yeah.
Yeah, what context?
What do you mean? What's going on? What needs to be led, right?
Yeah, that's really important. I think thing is that, we all have different strengths as a leader, and we're all different types of leaders. But really, the answer to be, how do I be an effective leader? It's like, well, I think you need to first understand the situation and view leadership skills as a toolbox. What do you need? A hammer? Do you need a screwdriver? Do you need a sponge? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, right. Well, so in this way, we're looking at different leadership styles. What we know about ourselves, the Enneagram makes it really clear. So it's one of the tools that we offer here. But we discover that we're pretty comfortable at certain things, right? Each of us has whatever those certain things are. They're really maybe great at encouraging others or helping someone think clearly or, recognizing when someone isn't doing as good as they could or whatever it is. Those things come naturally. And then on the other hand, there's something that doesn't come naturally, right? Maybe for one person, being direct is no problem. And for another, it's like the biggest problem of all.
Yeah.
So learning how do we all get comfortable shifting into those gears that maybe we don't have a lot of experience with so that we can be effective.
Exactly. And I think, to be also a good leader, you need to be a student of being a leader. You need to want to learn and get better and improve. And that's basically what leadership mastery is here at goodr. So I think there's also just it isn't a quick fix, right? It's not like it's not a one and done. It is a practice.
Yeah, right. That's a perfect way to put it. There's a practice, and practice involves reps, right? You got to get your reps in, and sometimes it works out the way you hoped, and sometimes you learn something important. Ideally, you're learning from all of it, but if we reframe everything as something that is for our benefit and our development, then that's a great baseline position.
Yeah, and I think, at goodr we've done, now we have Flock Leader 101, we have Mastery, we have a leadership coach, we have goodr U has any different courses. Also, we've built this thing. We've like laid this foundation over the past 9 years. Whether it's doing to done, whether it is multipliers, whether it's radical candor. Insert the tools that we constantly are like giving to our leaders. Then we're giving them the tools. We're sharpening the tools. It is very, very, very real, and then I think even internal things like AMP, which is our trimestrally review system, where we have a way we hold our leaders accountable to give their team feedback, and we there's a check-in for that. And so there's a lot of autonomy, and there's also just a lot of autonomy, a lot of support, and then some really key milestones to make sure people are on track. And we are finding out when all sorts of ways. There's certain leaders around here that I've in our last AMP that their team is giving them praise, and they're like, I don't think I'm doing a good job. It's like, well, your team would suggest otherwise. And then the past there's been examples of people like, I'm killing it. It's like, well, I'm gonna. So I think the other thing is, it's like, if you're a company, if you're a person, you want to hone your leadership skills. What's your accountability checkpoint? Who are you asking? Are you asking the person that you report to how you're doing? Are you asking your team how you're doing? If you are running a company or a team, what are the accountability checkpoints you're putting in place for people? Like, that becomes really, really key to becoming an effective leader. Like, we all have blind spots. We all can get better. Accountability is clutch.
Yeah, absolutely. And in order to receive the truth, we need to make it safe for people to share it with us, right? So part of developing trust, it isn't just like, oh, I can trust you to do what you say you're going to do, right? It's you can trust me to respond well to whatever you're going to share with me, because I actually want to know how I could improve, right? And so reframing things in a way that allows people to offer their feedback directly, because they know we legitimately want to hear it. We actually want to grow. We don't just want them to be like, nah, boss, you're doing great. Keep it up. It's like, no, I need you. This is critical to me to hear, what am I missing? What are my opportunities for growth? How could I shift something that would help us collaborate better as a team or whatever it is, and really invite actual legitimate feedback.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've kind of noticed recently is I think naturally a lot of people want to lead teams. They want to be a leader. I think I've noticed people who've been here for a while or brand new. It's the entire gamut. It does take a lot of energy to step in and use your voice as a leader, right? To define your team system processes, to take this ownership. It is very, I think it's more difficult than maybe people want to acknowledge of having that ownership. And at goodr, we want people to own being a leader. And I would say, be careful what you wish for, because it turns out it's quite a bit, very, very emotionally demanding.
Right, for sure. Well, and on that note, developing your emotional intelligence is kind of a massively important key to unlocking the whole thing, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, we've seen it here at goodr where people have gotten leadership positions and actually have transitioned out because they realized, I don't want to do that type of work. And maybe that's just for now. It doesn't really matter, but that's also an okay thing too. One of the things I'm actually most proud of the work we've done with leaders over the past year plus is there's been a few leaders of this company realize like, this isn't the right position for me, and I'm going to leave leadership at stay at goodr in another position. That takes an incredibly emotional and mature person.
Yeah.
And also it is a sign of how we hold the expectation we put on leaders.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And also it's just the support that's provided if someone recognizes they're not contributing in the way that is best for them or for the company, right? To be willing to go, oh, okay, cool, but you still want to do the thing? Great. Well, let's have you do that thing over here and we'll invite someone else into this role.
I think that one thing that just came to mind is, there's a cyclical nature as a leader. There's any number of people here that do a great job and have always done a great job. And also I still have to lead them. And I think there's this thing that, if you ever catch yourself being like, well, why should I have to do this? It's like, well, because you are the leader of that team. And so a couple recently asked for senior leaders to do a deep analysis at a meeting. And I purposely was like, I'm not going to do the template, because if I do the template, we talked about this on a previous podcast, if I do the template, it's gonna be from me. So I want their opinion. But what I did recognize in this, there was a month runway. As I would just listen, I'm like, nah, I don't think they're getting it. So I'm like, hey, I got to double down. So I sent 5 different looms to the senior Flashcard thread, which is, hey, I got to double down. I got to triple down on my expectations because I've heard this and this, and I'm worried it's not going to be. I got to quadruple down. I got down to a quintuple down. But so what's the lesson there? Are these people not doing good at their job? No, they're the highest performers of the company. The lesson there is that me as a leader, one of my jobs is to recognize what people need when. And what I was catching on to is this wasn't a set it and forget it ask. I wasn't asking somebody to turn off the lights. This is a new thing that has not been asked before. So I need to do whatever it takes. So and sometimes that might be building a detailed template if it's somebody more junior. These people are not junior. So it was listening and setting expectations constantly throughout, and not just expecting things to go said way.
Right, for sure. Well, so that is coaching, yeah?
Yeah. It's coaching. It is understanding. It is, I have a certain accountability to, this, Sean, it's usually you can see, if you're a good leader and you're in tune to your team, you can be like, something's feeling off.
Something
and
funky.
it can even be with somebody who's really a high performer. You're like, I know this person, there's a disconnect here. And so now you need to understand what that is.
Yeah, definitely. So that is, connection, right?
Yeah.
Being in tune enough to notice that shift, or notice when something isn't quite whatever. It's not really vibing for some reason. And that's something that I'll notice. Like if I share, here's a new project, here's what we're doing, here's why. And there's just kind of like, you can see there's an asterisk in their mind and they're like, okay, cool. It's like, yeah, but what's that? Why, you got to say the thing you're not saying. And then that sparks a conversation that gets us somewhere totally new and different, or answers a question that, would have like derailed the whole thing if it wasn't answered earlier or something like that. So it's super important to stay tuned in and connected, so that you can find those things in that moment, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the ability to quickly ask about something is also an important leader, right? There's a radical candor piece here, but there's a really importance of being like, oh, something's off. Hey, I noticed your body length shift. What's up? Like that is a simple thing that's going to save you and everybody a lot of fucking work if you can just identify it right away. Yeah,
right. And so there's two things: curiosity and a willingness to be a little bit uncomfortable for a little bit of time, right?
Yeah. And if you do it, I mean, I think what's wild is, man, people want it. They sometimes it's easy to think you're burdening somebody, like, oh, well, I'm being an asshole to this person. I'm like, no, actually, you're just being a really good, kind, thoughtful person. I think one thing I've tried to do as a leader recently is, when I don't understand something, is I'm like, let me say this back to you to make sure I understand it. And it's a small thing. And so what's awesome is sometimes it's like, yeah, or like, no. It is this. I'm right now, I'm interim CFO. And so I have skills of a leader. I don't have skills of a CFO. And what's been really wonderful in this is I get to hone leadership skills in an area I have zero domain. And that's a really great place to be. This is also why it's really important for me to say, let me make sure I understand what you're saying and say it back. So I know, and as a leader, you don't need to know all the answers, right? You just need to know the right questions.
Right, for sure. And make sure that the right problem is being solved, huh? Yeah, cool. So directing the team's attention even into your own ignorance, like, help me understand this, and then repeating it back. Did I get it? Does that making sense? Yeah. Cool.
All right, so right now inside of goodr, what do you think? I always think there's, we have leadership mastery listeners. We meet weekly-ish, and then we're learning things. Also, we have time carved out that I always refer to as, like, comms du jour, or what, or after we close an AMP or trimmers review, like, okay, where's the wind blowing? Where do I think, where's the opportunity? So I would say, what's one or two things you think our leaders are doing a really great job at right now, and what's one or two opportunities for a level up?
Great question. I think leaders are increasingly doing an excellent job of celebrating their teams, of like recognizing what is going well, and surfacing that up. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. Some of them we've covered on other podcasts, where we're like reporting things and strategy and things like that. There's increasing conversation about how to just communicate clearly and directly without, like, worrying too much about that. Getting oneself as a leader out of the way. Like, I need to be able to shift into this gear where I'm just plain clear and direct and showing up as a leader for my team, and recognizing that is an act of service to the team. It is like, maybe I'm going to feel uncomfortable, but this is what needs to be done for the role. On the level up side, let's see, that's a good question. I think, it's probably looking at ourselves honestly and saying, well, if there's a number of gears I can shift into as a leader, what are the ones I'm afraid to shift into? And how can I either learn something or practice something to help make that more available for me, because that will help develop me as a better leader for my team.
Yeah.
What do you see?
I mean, I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of great work. just based on, I think there's a lot, I think we are good at feedback, right? We can always get better, but I think we're just really good at both sides of it, celebrating, being, coaching people up. That's very, very real. I think a lot of our leaders are just exceptional at leading by example, maybe to their detriment at times. I think there's an opportunity to do less and lead more. I think what's really hard about that, better delegation, but I think what's hard is like understanding, because sometimes what is actually needed is for you as a leader to do that project. And I don't, there's not an easy yes or no. I think that especially when you're a brand new leader at goodr, it's really important for you to lead by example. And, at goodr, making presentations and presenting is a whole other world, right? It is and you as a leader need to come in and you need to force yourself to do that, because that's something that you're going to always have to do. So that's something that you're all right, that you need to lead by example on and hone that skill. And so I think balancing the leading versus when to lead, when to delegate is something that's an opportunity. And then this is the thing I said earlier, having people own their position as a leader and like being comfortable in that ownership. Yeah,
definitely. Awesome. Any advice for someone who's developing as a young leader, or who's maybe new to a leadership role to step into it and thrive?
It would be become a student of leadership. The amount of books and podcasts that I constantly listen to, it never ends. Asking constant feedback from people all around you, how you're doing, and then maybe not be afraid to just apologize when you fuck things up, because if you are the leader, it is probably your fault to some degree, whether you didn't set the right expectations, you didn't check in when you should have, you didn't model the behavior. And so as a leader, your ability to take that ownership on both sides, apologizing when you weren't clear, apologizing when you actually didn't make a mistake, man, that's very, very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, it's like the backwards law. You'd think that if you block it and pretend like you didn't make a mistake, that would help, right? But actually, when you own, I fucked that up, I'm sorry, I didn't communicate that clearly, it's a relief to everyone, and it builds trust, right? So it's like you get the thing you were actually after by doing the thing that feels like maybe not the way there.
100%.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Stephen. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everybody for listening. Until next time, be excellent to each other.